Hey everybody, I'm Stephen Cook. You may know me from my radio program Arkansongs that airs every Friday locally on KUAR, FM 89, 640 AM, 620 PM. Check it out. And I'm so pleased to be here at the Old State House. I've been working with these guys for so many years, and they were among the earliest people that paid attention when I tried to tell people about Louis Jordan. And a few months ago, my first book came out, and it's on Louis Jordan, and it's called Son of Arkansas, Father of R&B. And also, the Old State House was very helpful in securing some images for this book. And anyway, I'm going to talk a little bit about Louis Jordan and do a brief reading, and then have something that I've only in the past year or two have unearthed in my voluminous research on the father of R&B, Louis Jordan, and it's what I believe is his only color TV appearance, and we'll check that out. And I'm supposed to say that the Old State House gift shop has this book available, so if you'd like to purchase one once this scintillating talk is over and you're pretty moved with the word of Louis Jordan, you can get one and I'll gladly sign it. If you're not willing to take that plunge, I have a postcard that I will give you for free. So that's free too. In fact, I was at a book signing in Blytheville this weekend, and a guy couldn't afford the book, but he's like, will you sign this? I'm like, oh, okay, sure. So anyway, yeah, postcards free, signed, unsigned. The book is $19.99. So a lot of people ask me, how did you get into Louis Jordan, Stephen? You seem kind of obsessed with him. Rex Nelson said I was obsessed with Louis Jordan. I take a little umbrage to that because this guy is just really that good. And if you were in my shoes, you'd be obsessed too. And he's a guy that had more than 50 top 10 hits in the 1940s. And he influenced the people that we consider influences. James Brown, Bo Diddley, B.B. King, Sonny Rollins, Ray Charles, all down the line, these people that we think are the guys that did it all. Well, it didn't come from nowhere. You know, it came largely from Louis Jordan. And to me, a thing that sort of is indicative of how he blanketed the culture, it's like some of the catchphrases we still use today, like, ain't nobody here but us chickens, open the door, Richard. This is vernacular we picked up from Louis Jordan because his songs would be number one for 16 weeks at a time. And can you imagine how sick you would get of a song? After 16 weeks of being number one, there's no television to speak of. It's all radio, it's all jukeboxes. There's less popular culture. So it really permeated. This is why we're still saying, ain't nobody here but us chickens and stuff like that today. So to me, it's a no-brainer. Once you find out about Louis Jordan stuff, you keep getting into it. And to me, like if you have this 9-CD box set Ian was talking about earlier, 1938 to 1954, that's a lot of time. That's a lot of songs, and it's all good. And so this was a guy whose father was in minstrel shows and medicine shows, and he instilled into young Louis the idea that you must practice to get good. And so that's what he did. So he had no choice to be anything other than a great musician. And so I think if you do the homework and you read this book at $19.99, available at the gift shop, you'll see this guy, Louis Jordan, he's a direct line from the minstrel tradition to hip-hop today. It's a direct line, and this is what made him so good, is because he took all this culture and he sort of boiled it down from the big band era into something that's digestible to us with 5 pieces, 7 pieces. He's the guy that made the combos that we know today of rhythm and blues and rock and roll. He set the template. And so while we don't know his name as well as Johnny Cash, is kind of a mystery to me, I try to tackle that a little bit in the book that's available at the gift shop for $19.99. But I would like to read just a section. And one thing I've noticed, you know, when you, because I do this radio program too, writing for speaking out loud is different than writing for reading. So all these pithy phrases that I thought were so cute when I wrote them in the book, you say them out loud, they're not as great. I was listening to selected shorts on NPR, and I was like, well, I need to read like that. I need to read it so it's engaging to people. So I'm going to try that, but if it's not, it's the fault of the author here. And so I'm going to pick up, and it's not going to be a very long segment that I'm going to read because of the reasons that I just said, but we're picking up with our hero here in 1944. And what's happening with him is his career is really starting to bubble at this point in the 40s. He'd become a solo artist after being in the Chick Webb Orchestra, which was one of the biggest groups in the nation. And for him to be on there, to make it into the Chick Webb group, spoke its own volumes. But he went solo in '38. So he's been a solo artist for about 6 years now and is having incredible chart success. So that's where we're at. A September 1944 Billboard article noted the solidifying popularity of Louis Jordan and his Timpani Five as it revealed the winners of a first annual fan poll of the U.S. Armed Forces. Louis Jordan pulls a surprise vote of the season with 2 sides in the top 13, the only artist, aside from Bing Crosby, to get more than 1 record in the favorites list. Things were cooking for Louis professionally and coming to a head on the home front. His manager, Burl Adams, gamely sorts through the mess in his memoirs. I was surprised by the news that Louis Jordan was being sued for bigamy by his second wife, Ida, he says. She charged that Louis married her while he was still married to Julie. Julie's the wife from Hot Springs, Arkadelphia. Louis had told me that he'd married Julie in Brinkley and he'd had a child by that marriage. Because Jordan worked only on weekends at the clubs, he was short on rations and salary. According to Ida, that's when she married Louis. She claimed she took in laundry and did other domestic work in order to sustain them. Louis argued his innocence by pointing out that Ida had been he and Julie's babysitter in Philadelphia, so she knew he was already married. This is what I'm talking about stuff not transferring. Louis saying he's married these 2 chicks, right? And he's saying, this one, she was my babysitter, so she knew I was already married. That's his excuse. See, I just didn't try to do this reading stuff. Burl Adams said he tried to get Louis to settle. I told him he was at fault, that he had married 2 women, but Louis wouldn't hear of it. As he tells it, Adams went to Ida on his own and got her to agree to a $10,000 settlement. But Louis went through the roof when he got caught wind. Louis put the brakes on the settlement proposal and stubbornly, in effect, sent the matter to public trial. The day before the trial began, I begged him to dress simply and to play down his success, Adams writes. However, Louis arrived in court, expensively groomed, diamond ring and all. When I questioned him, he said, "You forget, Burl, I'm a star. How do I explain a dour appearance to the news people?" And that's the reading. Again, it comes across more real when you understand. This was the biggest, challenge in trying to write a book about Louis Jordan. He didn't have a lot of personal drama. He wasn't a big gambler. He was not a drinker, not a smoker, but he went through like 5 wives, and one of them tried to stab him, who's from Brassfield, Arkansas, and very nearly ruined his hand and injured his face and very nearly killed him. And she is the one, Fleecy Moore, who owns the copyrights on many of Louis' songs due to a very disastrous arrangement that he put together. So Louis Jordan is a guy that did so much but has really fallen off the map. So when I try to get people to engage to understand what Louis Jordan's about, I really try to talk about the songs. Say, oh, you probably know Is You Is or Is You Ain't My Baby. You probably know Ain't Nobody Here But Us Chickens. You probably know Choo Choo Boogie, Baby It's Cold Outside, and all these. So that's where I try to find the end. And most of these songs have stayed with us. And I have several theories about why Louis Jordan's name hasn't. And some of them has to do with like World War II rationing. And this was your grandparents' music or your parents' music. By the time the youth culture came along in the 1950s, no one was interested in the history lesson about where rock and roll came from. They just wanted to rock. They didn't want to think about wartime. And so I don't think there's one big reason, but I think there's several small reasons of why we don't know the name Louis Jordan. And I'm doing all I can, people. Y'all got to help me. Y'all got to help me. But I would like to read just another little section. My pride in this book was trying to flesh out Louis's life in his later years. We've got a lot of documentation about the 1940s when he was so successful. And to me, kind of his later years are a lot more interesting. But going through the 40s, there was so much material. And so I want to just read a little segment that shows what he tried to do, which was to try to cross over and get the black audiences and the white audiences, which of course were so separated. And it was probably quite a logistical feat beyond having to have the talent and the songs to do this. This will show how tough it was because you had to do two different tours, basically. You had to do a white tour and a black tour and hope that the two would align. So this is from a July 22nd, 1944 Billboard article. Jordan is going through a double-date booking arrangement, playing for white and colored dancers and for one-nighters in the Middle West. Leader recently played 2 dates in Oakland, California, where he drew 4,200 colored dancers at the auditorium and 2,700 whites at Bill Sweet's the following night. Leader will start a one-nighter tour in September, playing for both sepias and whites in Kansas City, Tulsa, Oklahoma City, Chicago, New Orleans, and Houston. And, you know, I talk a lot about Louis Jordan and stuff, but this is really kind of the crux to what made him so incredible, is that he tried to, as this chapter of the book available at the gift shop, straddle the fence. That's what this was a quote from him. Every quote in the book is a quote from Louis, straddle the fence. And this is what he was explaining that they did. After my record started to sell, we drew mixed audiences to clubs like the Tick-Tock in Boston, Billy Berg's Swing Club in Los Angeles, the Garrick in Chicago, and the Top Hat in Toronto. That's how we did it in the early 40s, so that we drew everybody. I was trying to do what they told me, straddle the fence. And this is the key to his success. He had the musical excellence, but also he and his manager had the foresight, or maybe just the greed, that was required to make all the money from all the groups. And, you know, I think you could talk about Louis' songs and that would be enough, but we also have to talk about, he brought in calypso music. He introduced calypso to America. He had the first music videos. He did his own films. Something that I barely even got into because I just didn't get the information in time and only had 40,000 words to do in this book, was how much he influenced rocksteady and reggae and all those sounds that were coming out in the 1950s. In Jamaica, they were about 10 years behind of music, of American music. And so they were swinging to the 1940s songs in the 1950s. And so that's what helped create reggae and rocksteady music. So it's really, this was like only in the past year that I've even discovered this, and I've been trying to find out everything I can about Louis Jordan all my life. So his influence is just so pervasive. It's kind of one of those things that is in plain sight, and you don't recognize it until you start looking, and it's like, oh man, it's everywhere. But again, my interest is not so much in his popular times, but really in his later times when he was kind of a sad guy that was desperately trying to get onto the charts, and for a number of reasons wasn't able to. He was on Ray Charles's label in the early 60s and had a great album, and then you couldn't find it in the stores, and it created kind of a rift between Ray Charles and Louis Jordan. And it's mystifying to me because he was still so agile and so talented and still playing the saxophone so well, even in his final years. So he was a guy that he kept it up, and he always had this incredible talent, and it was just, I guess it had become a museum piece. Unfortunately, at this point, he wasn't able to become a legacy artist like B.B. King or Ray Charles or these guys. And this is the same year that he got married to his fifth and final wife, Martha, who's from St. Louis, and interviewed her a lot for this book. And they went on tour. There's another segment later where she sings and dances a little bit. And so at this point, he'd found some peace in his life, if not in a professional sense. That continued to frustrate him, obviously, from basically the 1950s until 25 years later, until his death in 1975. He never had another hit. There was years when he didn't have a recording contract, and we look back now and go, why? But maybe at that point it would have been more understandable to us. And then we also had all these people that are great that are gone now. We're still hanging around, and many of them didn't have record deals either. In fact, it wasn't until like the Blues Brothers movie in 1980 that like all these people started getting jobs again. John Lee Hooker and Aretha Franklin, all these people are in that movie. And Louis Jordan's song "Get the Good Times Roll" is in that movie. But people would ask these guys later, it's like, how'd you get Ray Charles in this movie? And it's like, they were happy to get a gig in 1979, which says something bad about our embarrassment of riches that we have musically in America. And on that topic, I got noticed today the Library of Congress has accepted that song, Caldonia Boogie, into their national registry. There's about 200 songs in that registry, and they pick 25 songs that are important to American music history and popular song, and one of them that they chose this year is Caldonia Boogie. So that's cool. And I could just do a whole essay on this song. This is the first secular song. Caldonia is the first secular song that Little Richard ever learned. It was the first song that James Brown said he heard this. He saw the Caldonia movie. There was a film that starred Louis Jordan as a short film, and it was so successful in white and black theaters that's what led Louis to go on and do longer pieces that you can see here in the Lights, Camera, Arkansas exhibit. Because he was so magnetic on camera, but this was James Brown said this. He heard this song and he realized you could build a routine around songs. Can you imagine James Brown not knowing that you can build a routine around a song? Can you imagine that? Can you imagine not having James Brown at all? And that's what life would be without Louis Jordan. And so my challenge in writing this book, mainly not just trying to find the information, but trying to keep up with all the different members of the Timpani Five that would change by the week, it would seem like. And sometimes it was always called the Timpani Five. Sometimes there'd be 8. Sometimes there'd be 4. Today there was 4. And you just didn't know. And it seemed to change on Louis's whims. And it was interesting to me as a child. It's hard to separate the art from the artist. I assumed Louis Jordan was a partying dude. You listen to his songs and there's a party going on. That's how great an actor he was and how great he was at personifying the 1940s hipster guy. He didn't even drink, and he did all these songs. What's the use of getting sober when you're going to get drunk again? What a great song title, huh? But yeah, he had no idea, and didn't really like people that did drink and didn't like partying, and he didn't like hanging out. He wasn't a hanger-outer, but he portrayed a hanger-outer as good as George Clooney, Ernest Borgnine, any of our nation's finest actors. And he did show his magnetism on the screen. And yeah, that's pretty much my Louis Jordan spiel for today. I know that it was not the best weather, and again, I know most of you guys, I think, are getting paid to be here, but okay, maybe. But I really appreciate your interest, and I really would like to thank the Old State House for always, anytime I come with some crazy idea about Louis Jordan or some other music thing, they always listen to me, and sometimes they even let me come up and follow through with it. And I'm so thankful for them for not just doing the Lights, Camera, Arkansas, but our own Sweet Sounds thing. Again, 10 years ago, this helped people recognize that we have an incredible musical culture here in Arkansas. And I've been doing my radio show for 15 years, and I still find new people. But to me, there's never going to be another Louis Jordan, but this is what makes Arkansas music so great. It's not just blues, it's not just jazz, it's not just country, it's not just hillbilly, but it's all these things. And to me, Louis Jordan, he had country hits. He had two number one country hits. This is what makes he was so unclassifiable. He's too bluesy for jazz, too jazzy for pop, and all this stuff. So he made his own sound, and that's what I love about this guy. So I hope y'all would check it out. And again, postcards are free, but they have some other cool things in that gift shop too. But if anyone has any questions about Louis Jordan, I'd be very pleased to try to answer. Yes, sir, Mr. Worthen.
I was on YouTube a year or two ago, and I came across Bing Crosby singing "Is You Is" or "Is You Ain't My Baby," and it just, it's just sort of incongruous. I couldn't figure it out, but obviously he was doing what was hot with the young people.
Right. Well, he did do duets with Bing too, not just a cover song. They did two duets together, and these were two of Decca Records' biggest selling stars. And everyone knows Bing's name today. No one knows Louis Jordan.
If you and Louis were to meet, what would you ask him? Is there a question that just going, if I only knew?
I've never been asked that before. That's a really great question. And I don't know if I have an answer for it, because the things that I don't know, like what happened to you, Louis? That would be, and he doesn't know. He was full of questions and doubt through the second half of his life as well. So I don't know that I have a really good answer for that, because also he's like a member of the family to me at this point. I feel like I kind of know him. Even before I did this book, I feel like I never have to do too much prep when I come do a Louis Jordan talk, because it's in my heart, So yeah, I don't know. I would love to chat with the guy, but I don't know that I would have a burning question. I'm sure there's plenty of things that would come up, but maybe like, why did you marry that lady when you knew you were already married? Because that happened like 2 or 3 times. Couldn't you figure it out the first time? And why'd you wear your diamond ring to court? It was like, that was a dumb move, man. So stuff like that, because he really did seem like he was a guy that liked to be in control. And so the thing with the women is an anomaly, it seems like, in his personality. But we know how these women are. I'm talking to you, young lady. Anybody else? Burning question about Louis Jordan?
What about at the very end of his life? You covered that in the book. Like, where's he at? What's he doing? These kind of things.
Man, it's kind of sad. Like I say, there's some years where there's no recording contract, and he does a lot of fishing, gets into photography, and it's more exciting than in the book than what I'm saying right now. But no, it's kind of sad. And there's a moment that Martha tells me about where she catches him just staring out the window, and he's like, I wonder if everyone's forgotten about old Louis Jordan, and that just breaks my heart, And so he was in a bad situation. He was not in a good financial situation, and not in a good business or professional situation, and it was just starting to turn around for him when he had a heart attack in '75. He was unable to play the saxophone because of a heart attack, and the international booking agents, 1975, we're starting to see the blues tours, packages in Europe and all that, and he was getting bookings again, and it all came together for him too late for him to take advantage of that, or that even would have gotten his name out there again, which I think it was just a matter of bad timing and bad health and bad financial decisions. So it was not a good time for him. But to me, that I think how a person behaves when they face adversity says a lot about who they are. So that to me was the most interesting part to try to put together as like, what is it like after you've been the king of the jukeboxes, and then you can't get arrested. Nobody even knows your name. So to me, that was the most interesting part of it. To me, was trying to find that out. But it wasn't a happy story.
Which of his songs been most recorded by other artists?
I would say, probably Caldonia or Is You Is, which, Is You Is had its own shelf life, I guess. It kept becoming a popular number. And what's weird to me is in the past 10 years, suddenly everyone cares about Baby It's Cold Outside. When I was growing up, that was not a Christmas perennial favorite. And now it's like it is. It's even, I heard disturbingly the other day that it's on the Duck Dynasty Christmas album, which I did not even know that existed. And now, not only do I have to know that it exists, I know that they did Baby It's Cold Outside on that album. One of the husband and wife, you guys probably know who they are, but the husband and wife apparently do a very romantic version of Baby It's Cold Outside. So yeah, that song keeps going, which is weird to me that it's had such a resurgence. But I would think, and I probably have this written down somewhere, but it would be Is You Is or Caldonia, because so many people did Caldonia in so many different fields. Like Roy Clark did it in bluegrass, and I can't even name, but there's just so many people did that. And that was the weird thing about his songs. They and maybe it's because they expressly tried to cross over into different camps, races, cultures, whatever it is. The material they were able to choose was something that sort of transcended the genres, and that's why he was able to get a country hit and an R&B hit and a pop hit out of it. And he was such a mainstream guy, and that's kind of, he's sort of a guy that he was a safe choice for everybody. You knew what you were going to get, and he was not a political person, so he wasn't going to bother you with his issues about racism and things like that, which is probably what was needed in the 1940s to usher in, the civil unrest that justifiably came about, in the 50s and 60s. And I do try to discuss this in the book about, he got a lot of flack for being an Uncle Tom and for being a person that did not take the racism in America seriously, because he's not on record saying anything about it, unlike Louis Armstrong, for example. And so I try to show what he did do behind the scenes in his touring of going to white clubs and black clubs, and he'd go to the white hotel every time. Martha told me about this. Every year he'd go to the same hotel. We've got 20 people here. Don't you want to give us a room? Nope. So we'd go, and then finally one year it's like, okay, come on in. We'll take your money. How was that hard, But I try to talk about that, because I think that it wouldn't be a very good book if I didn't talk about those things in there, and his lack of response is its own response too. But to me, that was a very interesting chapter to write. And I talked because they had Louis Jordan Day in September 1957. He was invited to come back to his hometown of Brinkley, and of course the whole situation was marred by the Central High deal. And that's when Louis Armstrong made his very strident statements about Orville Faubus being an uneducated plowboy, and Louis's silence was deafening in comparison to what, he didn't say a word about that, and he was in Little Rock during that time, and everybody was saying something about it. It was Russian propaganda. It was a huge deal, as we all in this room know, but Louis Jordan was silent about that. So, yeah, he in many ways, he was a multifaceted guy. He's not a partier. He's not the guy on the record, but he was a quiet guy, believe it or not. And he was so quiet about civil rights that I think it turned around 20 years later, when we're all feeling froggy about this kind of stuff. When you can say stuff like that, it's easy for us to come back and go, why didn't Louis Jordan say something, and that just wasn't his way. wasn't even what you were asking me about. Sorry. So, anybody else? Anybody else? We got America's leading Louis Jordan expert here. I know you got some questions, but if not, again, thanks so much, Bill, and thanks you guys for being here on a nasty day, and really thanks so much for the Old State House Museum for doing what they do, and Camark Pottery, it's right there. It's like everywhere you go, it's like there's something cool about Arkansas culture, and I hope you guys, I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but you know, it's such an interesting topic, and I'm glad, you know, I think, again, even 10 years ago, people weren't as interested in our Arkansas culture as they are now, and so Old State House can take a lot of credit for that. I'll take just a small bit about the Louis Jordan stuff, and y'all can have the rest. But yeah, postcards, this is at the bookstore, at the gift store. It's $19.99. But guys, thank you so much, and I hope to do some more on this too.